Welcome everybody again to today's live talk. My name is Nina Brinkmann. I'm Senior Key Account Manager and Industrial Psychologist at INSITE. If you do not know INSITE yet, we have been a provider in the field of corporate health for the past 25 years. And our focus is on employee assistance programs such as Mein ERP, Talingo ERP, or short-term therapy that some of you might know from your current employer. I will be your host today, and I brought two wonderful colleagues with me. Nora will take care of the chat today, and of course there is an expert for today's topic with us, and that's Katharina. And Nora, could you kindly start off, introduce yourself, and give some technical advice to our attendees, please?
Yes, of course. Thank you very much, Nina. As Nina has just said, I will be overseeing the chat today, but I will also give you a brief introduction into some technicalities. You will see several windows now. In the largest one, you will see me and my colleagues. You can enlarge or move the windows all around, so feel free to experiment and see what works best for you. To the right, you will see a field where you can ask our expert questions. Only I will be able to see these questions, so no other participants will see them. So you don't have to worry about them being broadcasted for everyone. They will be completely anonymous, and I will try my best to incorporate your questions into the conversation. And we definitely encourage you to ask questions that you have. Once you have submitted your questions, it will disappear from your screen, but that's fine. I will have received them. There might be a lot of questions, and I hope you understand that we may not be able to answer them all. Also, some questions might be a little too personal, a little too individual, and in that case, we will also refer you to our consulting program. At the end of the session, we ask you to give feedback. So to do so, please answer the questions in the feedback window. There are 5 questions, so please enlarge that window so that you can see all the questions.
Thank you so much, Nora. And as mentioned, we have our very experienced expert in the field of mental health. Katharina, would you also please introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah, thank you for having me. My name is Katharina Staben. I'm a psychologist and psychotherapist, and I provide short-term counseling at INSITE. So yeah, I'm happy to be here today to talk about this topic that affects us all.
Thank you, Katharina. You mentioned it. We have a very relevant topic today, and the title is called "Every Day is a Good Day to Talk About Mental Health." And of course, in order to be able to talk about mental health, first and foremost, language is needed. And that's why actually we decided to hold today's live talk in English, which is a language many of us speak, but not all of us are native speakers, obviously. And when it comes to Germany, we often face the challenge that mental health support services are oftentimes difficult to access. You have bureaucratic hurdles that can be tough. Waiting times are most of the time long. And on top of that, there could be language barriers that particularly affect people who seek support in their native language. Good news is that the range of available services is becoming increasingly diverse. However, we still would like to pay tribute to this particular challenge by holding this event today in English. And it is actually delightful to see that so many of you dialed in today. Katharina, what were your thoughts when you were asked to do this live talk "Every Day is a Good Day to Talk About Mental Health" in English?
Yeah, to be honest, my first thought was I'm not the right person to find the perfect words in English because I think you can hear already that I'm not a native speaker. My mother tongue is German, and I was a bit worried when it comes to such an important topic as mental health that I wouldn't find the perfect words for it. But then I thought, okay, wait, what's this? So maybe this is what it is about, that it's not about finding the perfect words for something, but it's about the attempt to find words at all, even if it's not the mother tongue, maybe. Because I think that the attempt to find words is more important than everything is correct, the words are perfectly put. And it also reminded me of something I experienced some years ago at my first workplace, which was a psychiatry. And in the psychiatry, we had patients who also needed an interpreter, so a person who translates. And sometimes it happened once in a while that the interpreter didn't show up for whatever reason.
Okay.
And I was about then to cancel the sessions because I thought back then, okay, if the interpreter is not coming, what could I do now? And an experienced colleague told me, okay, don't cancel the session, just give it a try. You have, in German we say we have hands and feet. I think, we can also communicate by gestures. And she said to me, the attempt that you tried and that you didn't cancel the session, this will do something. And this is something I'm very convinced of. And I try to also bring this attitude a bit to today's live talk as well.
Wow, yeah, I really like that attitude. Thank you for sharing this story. I'm not a native speaker myself, obviously, so I can totally relate to what you just said and the nervousness that comes with it. But I'm sure we will do our best, and I'm also sure that our audience will be patient with us. And I would say let's dive right in, shall we, Katharina?
Sure, yeah.
All right. So then I think it's really important to get the terminology straight in the beginning. So maybe we could talk a little bit about what exactly we mean when we talk about mental health and why that is so important for actually everyone.
Yeah. I think what's important is that mental health is more than the absence of a psychological disorder. Sometimes we think it is the absence of a psychological disorder, and I would definitely say it's not. It's definitely more, because mental health is about our whole emotional well-being. And emotional well-being can be seen in so many areas of life. So our relationships, paid work, but also care work, that we feel in control, that we can cope with life challenges. And I think that everyone experiences, of course, ups and downs, and also negative feelings belong to mental health, because if we experience ups and downs, this is actually a good sign, because this means that our psychological system reacts to what we experience. I think it's so important to talk about mental health, especially when it comes to the work environment, because in the work environment, we have a lot to do with pressure, of course. Maybe time is rare. Mental health sometimes fades into the background, and mental health is the foundation for being creative, for our relationships and work, of course.
Yeah, that's a really important point that you are mentioning. We will focus today on what is important to support our mental health, rather than focusing on certain diagnoses or symptoms, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but then in reality, many people only recognize that they are under strain when things have already gone kind of too far. Could you share some early signs with us that help the attendees also to see those signs and react to them?
So typical signs I recall from my counselings are, for example, when clients tell me, I was on vacation, but I don't feel that my batteries are charged again. Or I had a weekend and the Monday actually feels like a Friday, for example. Yeah. Or I sleep enough, but I feel exhausted. I mean, who feels fully charged at 6 a.m.? But of course, exhausted still after people have gotten up, got breakfast, went to work, still exhausted, for example. Sometimes people say that they feel pain in their body, for example, like a lot of tension in the muscles or a headache, for example. And I think it's a very good thing that nowadays it's for us, we think more often about maybe that there might be underlying stress also of bodily symptoms. Or people say, for example, usually I like to meet my friends, but right now everything's too much. Even meeting them on a Wednesday evening is too much. And I think this is also a sign, a signal, not a weakness, but a sign from our psychological system and also from our body that maybe right now we should do something.
Yeah, so if I understand you right, you would say that downplaying small signals is not the right way, rather than looking at yourself more closely with more mindfulness and also take more care about yourself in the end.
Yeah.
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 And what would you say, when is the right time to take action?
With the first signals, I mean, the earlier the better, of course, as always. But if I am lucky that I can recognize these signals and that I decide that I want to act on them, then it's a good question to ask yourself, what do I need now? What could it be? And of course, don't wait too long to seek professional help. But sometimes we can begin by, let's see what I can do about it at first.
Absolutely. And I find your example very interesting that you used by when you return from a holiday and you expect to be refreshed, and then you go back to the office or to your work, and after 2 days you already feel more exhausted than before. I think that's a really good example because that's not so obvious, such as, for example, physical pain, that most of us realize that that's a warning signal from our body. But if I don't feel relaxed after a vacation, I would probably not be so alarmed. I would rather, I know from clients that I speak with that tend to make jokes, oh, my vacation is already 2 days ago, I'm already exhausted again, and that's normal. Some people really say it's like something that I would have expected. Yeah. But it's actually not.
Yeah, totally. I mean, sometimes people say, I think you know this, okay, now it's stressful, but I can manage it. I can do it up to the vacation in 2 weeks, in 3 weeks, or whenever. And then everything gets better. And maybe on vacation it is like this, but then people come back to work on the old system. And there's usually everything still the same. And sometimes it's more about changing something in our daily routines, of course.
Yeah. And when we talk about work, why do you think is it so difficult for many people to talk about their mental health openly, especially at work?
I think it's still new to us. And of course, it has to do with some old beliefs that talking about mental strain is linked to weaknesses, or that we have a fear that this might have consequences, or that this means that we fail. But I would say mental strain, I mean, everybody experiences mental strain at work. And in my experience, openness often starts small. So, for example, when also colleagues, but also managers, all kind of role models, of course, open up and maybe sometimes say, okay, I had a tough day. or I changed something about my priorities, or yesterday I needed an afternoon just to work quietly without meetings, something like this. It's small, but I think this definitely changes something in the way we communicate when it comes to mental strain.
It's a process that takes some time, and you just said the individual is making a difference, which is completely true. So kind of a bottom-up approach, but you also already mentioned the role of managers, leadership teams, and what is your view on like the company, the CEOs, for example, so really the top of the company?
Yeah, it plays a big role, of course. Yeah. So if this person is a good role model, I think this affects, of course, everybody in the company, definitely, consciously or unconsciously in some way. And I think everybody, and especially, of course, the management can make a difference by how they do it, walk the talk, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's like a combination of different things. The ideal scenario would be if the top management already walks the talk, the managers also are role models, and the individual does his own or her own job in talking about openly. But still, it's also an impact if you start only with yourself. I think that's what you also wanted to say, right? Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, because sometimes you don't have you simply don't have this ideal scenario at work.
Yeah, I can wish for, but I can only start with myself. Yeah, as always.
Yeah. Okay. And when we talk about communication around mental health, from your experience, what are the main differences in the way that people talk about mental health or mental strain?
Well, I think there's a great variety depending on so many factors: personality, of course, background, biography, parents, role models, what I've learned, of course, but also age and the situation I'm in, definitely. So, yeah, as I said before, sometimes we have old role models who didn't talk openly about mental health, psychological strain, and maybe even if I decided to do it differently, maybe this is still a part of me that somehow one part of me thinks, okay, if I do it, this is linked to a weakness, for example, or I shouldn't do it, or yeah. And on the other hand, I noticed that younger people, I think many of us know, tend to talk about mental health and psychological strain more openly. And I lately saw this video on Instagram, maybe you all know it, where was a bit exaggerated, caricatured. So where the manager calls a colleague for the meeting, like, where are you? Come to the meeting now. And she says, wait, I have to heal my inner child first. And so I think, I mean, this is obviously not meant seriously, but it shows that it could be that new generations, younger generations, from maybe a counter movement, as we always have it in history, to the older generations. And sometimes, yeah, maybe the pendulum has to swing to one extreme before we find some kind of balance in the middle. And I think we should be very thankful for that, because it's a present, yeah, to our society.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned the very positive aspect of this belief of this change in a belief system as a society, basically. But of course, every story has its two sides. Would you think that, especially concerning the younger generation, is there already also a downside to this new way of communicating?
Yeah, maybe when it comes to the wording. So sometimes it goes in the communication a bit too far, because what we see is that there are certain expressions like, for example, I feel depressed, or this is a trigger, this triggered me. And I think this can be like a devaluation of people who actually suffer from a depression or suffer maybe from a PTSD. And I think that when it comes to communication, it should always be mindful. So we can find other words for it. I can say, I'm angry, I'm sad. For our feelings, there are so many beautiful words that we can use. We don't have to use the words which are meant for actually psychological disorders. Yeah, I think this is maybe the downside we sometimes experience with it.
Okay. Yeah, that reminds me of it's actually a German expression, but I would translate it like too much from something good is still too much.
Yeah.
If that's understandable for somebody who speaks English, I hope so. I just translate it as really word by word, but I think that's kind of fitting. Nora, I can see that you came in with your camera. Is there any question you would address at this point?
Yes, thank you. I thought this was a good moment to bring up the specific question because we're on the topic of communication and finding the right words. And someone shared their living situation where they have trouble with their neighbors and they have this language barrier because they don't speak German, and it makes them feel really distressed and a little bit out of control. And they asked for advice on how to regain control of your life if you can't really communicate what you would like to communicate.
Yeah, this is definitely very, very difficult because, we absolutely rely on our language to express. I don't know exactly, of course, what it is exactly about, but how to express it apart from the language that we have. And maybe when it comes to solutions, I think we sometimes need our creativity of, if we don't have a solution for this, maybe there's something that might help us. Maybe it's technically, maybe it's socially. So maybe I can ask around and find somebody who's helpful with that, who can support. I think there's this statistic who says, I don't know, is it 7? Everybody in this world knows everybody via 7. I don't know how to express it. Maybe somebody knows what I'm trying to say. Yeah,
history,
right.
Family history, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe support is available, and I don't know it yet. So yeah, I would say try to look for somebody who can help with that. Maybe translate, maybe has an idea, maybe has the technical advice for it, how to do it, that you can express yourself.
Yeah, thank you. I hope the question is answered appropriately. If not, give us feedback in the chat. And I think this topic all around communication is so important. And when we switch back to the workplace again, there's also quite a challenge, I would say, because when I'm mentally unwell at work and the reasons are private, I can imagine it can feel quite wrong to approach my manager and talk with him or her about my personal life. What are your thoughts on that? How can I solve that scenario?
Yeah. Yeah. This is so important, I think. I also thought about this when I saw the title of our live talk. It was "Every day is a good day to talk about mental health." This sounds good, but it doesn't say with whom and how. And these are so important questions because, of course, it makes a difference when it comes to my manager or my best friend. Of course, the way I approach it is very differently. And I think helpful is maybe an underlying question for several scenarios, be it the manager, as you said, I don't want him to know maybe what bothers me. I don't want him to know the details of my private life. But also when it comes to friends. So an underlying question of what do I need? So why do I talk to him? Why is it important for him to know? Or what do I need from this person? And am I actually allowed to need something? So am I allowed to go to the manager and say, for example, right now, in order to work well, I need an afternoon where I don't have meetings, for example. Is this a possibility? Or can I go to friends and say, listen, today I need a hug? So needing something is in our society not very well regarded, I would say, because we all like to be independent. We shouldn't need anything, just care for ourselves. And I would like to encourage people to say what they need. So to maybe get an idea of, if I go to this person and maybe open up and say, right now, I don't feel that well, but what do I want from this person? How can this person be helpful for me? So, for example, in the counseling sessions with my clients, right at the beginning, even before maybe they tell me what it is about, I ask them, what do you wish for in our conversation? Or how can I be helpful for you? And sometimes they even laugh and say, okay, what do I wish for? A wish? This is such an absurd question because in a long time, nobody asked them what they wish for. But I think it's super important because I never know. And sometimes I'm very surprised. I'm like, okay, yeah, somebody maybe just wants that I listen. Somebody maybe wants that I brainstorm about solutions with the person together. And I never know before. And other people also don't know what we need if they don't feel well at work, for example. So, yeah, I would like to encourage you to talk about what you wish for or what you need.
Yeah, so simple and so powerful, isn't it? And it takes a little bit of courage as well, I would think. And maybe just a thought, maybe it's also worthwhile if I have the feeling, going back to the manager scenario, if I have the feeling that for some reason I don't feel like I can talk to him or her about it, maybe it's worthwhile finding out why. So
yeah.
Is there, for example, a relationship challenge between us, or is it maybe also the the way my manager acts or behaves?
Yeah. Makes a difference. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I think it's also it's always worth trying and finding out. And sometimes you said it as well. Sometimes we get surprised. Yeah. Sometimes we get an answer that we did not expect.
Yeah.
In a positive way, of course.
Yeah.
Okay. And then leaving the field of talking about feeling unwell. We talked a lot about expressing this, which I think is extremely important. But I'm asking myself, is it not also relevant to speak more about the positive side of the story when we are feeling actually really good? What would you think about that?
Yeah, I love this topic because humans they always want to share. Maybe we have this negativity bias, right? So talking about positive things is sometimes difficult for us, and sometimes we are. It also has to do with empathy. So maybe if I tell my colleagues, listen, today is a good day for me. I feel powerful. I felt joy today, gratitude. We don't want anybody to have bad feelings about it. So sometimes we have shame to talk about the positive sides and the positive aspects also of emotional well-being. But I think it's super important, and we could do this more because, yeah, it's good for us. And for example, I always ask clients in the sessions, what do you like doing just for fun? Or what do you enjoy? Because sometimes when I ask, okay, what was positive today or in the last weeks or since our last session, they tell me what they have achieved or where they did perform or something. And I rather like to look on the side of fun, of pleasure, of joy. And sometimes they also say like fun. Yeah, the life is so full of responsibilities as an adult. Yeah, am I actually still allowed to just do things for fun? And I would definitely say yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's again mindfulness that comes into play here, I would say. I mean, I think also it's really important to open your mind for the small moments of happiness, of calmness, that might not be completely overwhelming, but still very giving.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, now I think we are leaving a little bit the field of communication and going more into the direction of some tips and tricks and things around that. So I would like to use this moment to ask Nora if there are any other communication-related questions in the chat.
I think some of the questions that were posed, you're going to answer soon, I reckon. So maybe I'm going to wait until you're further down the session. But I've had an interesting question here. I hope it doesn't derail where we're at right now. But I thought it was interesting, and it kind of ties into what you just said about thinking positively. There's someone here that described that they educated themselves about mental health a couple years ago. And since then, they noticed a lot more problems and are chasing constantly to fix things about themselves that before they were educated about them weren't a problem. And now they're wondering how they can calm that down again and get back to just being okay.
Yeah, super interesting, because we observe this phenomenon, especially with younger people who get a lot more education about this topic of mental health as we did maybe when we were back at school. And there are studies that show exactly this phenomenon, that the effect can be that if I know a lot about these phenomena, I maybe find myself in them and be maybe, if I experience anxiety, can be scared that I have maybe a panic disorder, or if I feel sad, I think, okay, this might be a depression. And this is a downside, we have to say, even if we have such a good intention behind it. And this has also to do, especially for younger people. I don't know if this person who raised the question, what age he or she is, but for younger people, of course, it's hitting a vulnerable phase of identification processes. So what we read and what we hear is important for the development of our personality. And I think the best is the knowledge. So that if we know about this phenomenon and we have self-awareness, and it sounds like it, that the person has, then we can maybe, if we go into that direction, like, okay, I think maybe I have this disorder or that disorder, maybe we can speak to ourselves and say, okay, now I'm going in this direction again. It might not be helpful, so let's go back again. And sometimes if we do this already and it was a bit helpful but not enough, sometimes it can also be helpful to ask ourselves, why? So what does this stand for? Why do I do it? Is there any... So I always have the impression that our psyche, our inner self, is doing things for a reason, for a purpose. So maybe there's an underlying reason. As I said earlier, for younger people, maybe it's about identification and personality development. And for the person with the question that I don't know, maybe there's another good reason for why the inner self does this again and again.
Yeah, thank you very much for the answer. I think that was a very, very good answer. I'm learning as well as I'm hearing. I would like to pose another question if we have the time. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
I'm here, like I'm seeing a lot of people kind of touching on the same thing, which we're talking a lot about basically like personal management of what's going on within you and how to bring it up and how to communicate. But it seems that a lot of people are wondering, so when do I know if it's like a more personal issue or something that I'm personally overwhelmed by, or if it is actually maybe also a company issue that affects like a wider range of colleagues and coworkers? So how do I differentiate? And then I reckon those two things would be brought up differently. So can you maybe like, give us a hand on that?
Yeah. So maybe it is very rarely, from my experience, that complex problems have only one or easily seen reason, right? So it could be, for example, the case that there is a problem in a system like a company for many people, but everybody reacts differently to it with different emotions depending on your own experience, your own past, of course. So I think it's a very complex question, definitely. Many people find it, of course, helpful to talk to colleagues to find out a bit more. And it really makes difference because it maybe gives me also an advice on where to focus on. So is it important to tackle an outer change? So maybe to talk to other colleagues to change something, to address maybe also the management level, HR, work council, other institutions, people themselves, which are where issues arise. And at the same time, I don't think this is a neither nor, but it's always both. And at the same time, maybe look on the inside and take a closer look of what does this situation here do to me personally, individually, not because I am the problem, but because it could be that my colleague experienced the same situation and would say, okay, yeah, from the side of the facts, this is an issue here, but the emotions are totally different. So one person could react with anxiety, the other one could be very angry. And of course, this is something I also have to take care about. So I usually like to take care of both sides.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because as you just said, the same strain can react or can create so different reactions on two different people. And I think it's always helpful, rather than asking if I'm the problem, which already implicates that there's something wrong with me, which shouldn't be the case, rather try to find out, why do I react like this? Is there maybe a reason behind that is not even tied to my work, but to maybe my private life or my history or something? But it's a really, really broad and complex topic. And that's maybe also a good moment to mention that some of the questions we receive in the chat obviously are very individual and very individual. And obviously it's sometimes then difficult to discuss those in a group, but please don't feel discouraged if we do not touch upon your question, because if you if your company is a client of ours, and if your company offers the EAP program, that's the perfect moment to use this program and address your individual situation. So just bear in mind, we are not ignoring those, but it's just sometimes a little bit too particular. Yeah. But we also have experience, and we learned from talks in the past. And what we learned is that the audience a lot of times loves practical tips. And that's why we would like now to switch to this field a little bit more. And I would like to start off with stress management. And maybe, Katharina, you can share with us some tips and tricks how to manage stress better in the daily life, because I think stress is something that every one of us has to face.
Yeah, and which is also normal, right? Yeah, stress is part of our daily life. Yeah. Yeah, I would begin with self-awareness. So to check in with yourself emotionally or also physically. And this sounds super easy, but it is not. So you can think, okay, how many of you know the situation that you are thinking about, okay, should I go to the toilet or not? Even if I feel I have to, or maybe I'm hungry, or maybe I have a headache and realize I didn't drink enough water. So when it comes to basic physical needs, I think this is a good thing to start with because it's so concrete to improve self-awareness and actually listen to your body at first, which leads us to breaks. I'm always wondering about how many people don't do proper breaks or do breaks, but breaks are then maybe caring about the household, for example. This is not a break, this is work, in my opinion. And there are many reasons for why we don't allow us breaks and so on, and the day is fully packed and then children are waiting and so on. I know all this, but I think if we don't do proper breaks, this keeps our stress level high, and stress is not the problem. The problem is that we skip on the relaxation phases, and relaxation doesn't only happen on vacation or at the weekends, but it has to happen during the day while we are at work. Maybe this sounds a bit paradox, but it's important to relax at work, because otherwise, of course, we easily get into burnout and all these things. And of course, this leads us to priorities. I know this is not a favorite topic because we all think that everything is urgent, but if I want to make a break and if I want to quit work on time, for example, then I have to set priorities and also to take the emotional burdens that if I did this, then maybe there will be a backlash of somebody who is maybe, not happy that I didn't do something. So then I have to do emotional management about this. And for this, of course, I need energy. Yeah. And maybe also being authentic is also key. This whole live talk that we do leads us in this direction to be more ourselves than playing a role or be a person who's always functioning, because we're not every day 100%. And I think it's very crucial that we find a strategy that really fits us. So many people know about all of this. If I ask them, okay, what kind of strategies could you think of? They're like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They have all the knowledge, but we need an individual strategy that really works for us and for our situation and our life and our workplace and with our family responsibilities. And I would rather recommend to maybe pick one single strategy and really adapt it to my life and to really decide that I want to try this.
That's really useful, because I had a personal example right before my eyes. When I work from home, I have a really nice route to take walks, and it's the perfect length for a lunch break. And I did it sometimes, and I loved it. And I work in in the health industry. I'm a psychologist myself. I'm completely aware how important it is to take breaks. I'm completely open to it, and I don't do it.
Yeah.
Why is that? And what's the trick? I mean, what can I do to convince myself in the moment to actually get up off my chair and out of my house? But then probably the answer is not so easy as you just said. Maybe I need to find an individual strategy for myself.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. But as you said, it's not only self-awareness, right? So maybe in that moment you are aware of, okay, I continue work instead of going on a walk. But maybe not, because sometimes it's helpful if it becomes a conscious decision. If I remind myself, okay, I can work through my whole break, but then it's a decision that I make, and it has not happened to me. Yeah. But sometimes it gets very interesting when, as you said, you're like, okay, it is a deliberate decision, but why? And now this would maybe take more than 2 minutes with you, for example, to find out why is it in your case, because this is very individual, why we don't do it. There can be several reasons for it.
Yeah. I think it's just a very good example, because that's something I think every one of us has, right? This one thing that he or she knows it would be even easy to do, but still I don't do it. So, but I think don't be too hard on yourself also, right? Be a little bit forgiving if you do not follow all the good advices, but rather, as you also said before, rather pick one and do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, very interesting. And then when we are talking about tips, apart from managing stress, do you as a therapist have any favorite mental health strategies without going into too individual scenarios?
Yeah.
Would you share some?
Yeah. So, my favorite strategy is to have a good breathing technique. I think this is super useful. It's not crucial which technique it is. There are a lot of great techniques, but having one really good breathing technique that works for you individually and that you can really rely on also in situations where you are stressed, where you feel anxiety. This is super helpful because breathing is the quickest way to our nervous system. And for example, words or belief sentences and so on, they can't be so fast. Breathing is always faster. So this is very useful, I think. Movement too. So exercising. I saw a lot of people who, when they were in a bad condition, who started exercise, did something that they really liked. So not maybe if going to the gym is boring, then they found something that they really liked. And I saw changes also mainly because they started exercising. It's really, really good for our mental health too. And maybe a third that I sometimes initiate is, it's very simple but very powerful, and this is time. So time for yourself, and time which doesn't have a certain goal, which is open time, where you don't have to do anything at all. So not to work on your to-do list, and also not to say before, okay, I'm going to do this or that. Free time for ourselves that we give to us is very rarely, because we always have the impression we have to do something. And also when it comes to relaxation, we think, okay, then I have to go for a walk, or I have to meet my friends because this is relaxing. Yeah, this is always good, but open time, which is not planned, is very useful. And sometimes I give people this thought experiment if they have no idea what to do with this time, or they say, okay, then I turn to my smartphone and scroll on Instagram. What else could I do? And then I try this thought experiment that I say, okay, imagine that this is extra time. It's not time of your day, not of the 24-hour day. It's a present. You get the present of extra time now, and the time for everybody else is frozen. So we can freeze everyone. We can freeze work, the family, the friends, everybody in this world. For them, time stands still, but you get extra time. Maybe a day, maybe a week, maybe 4 weeks extra time, a present only for you. And now, what would you do with this time? And you can, maybe think a bit about it. So usually people then know what they want to do with this time, even if it's maybe irrational or not realistic. So of course, I can't now fly 4 weeks to the Bahamas. Yeah, of course. But then maybe it's easier to grasp, okay, what is the idea of what might be good for me? It's about awakening the imagination of what are my longings that are maybe buried under a huge pile of responsibilities and work and so on. What would I do with extra time, which is a present?
Interesting. I will think about that tonight and try to find it out. And do you think that people, that would be my first thought on that we are not used to doing nothing. We are just, that's really challenging. It's really difficult.
Yeah, it's already in our biological system. This is, they made studies with people, they put them in a room, there's nothing, they can't see anything, hear anything, and they say, maybe you know the study, they say, think of nothing. And the brain is like super active, and it's not only for certain people, or this is a common human thing that if there's nothing, our brain invents something and gives us material and wants to be feeded. We are active by heart. It's human.
And you think? Do you think we can practice doing nothing? Is it realistic?
I think it's interesting to see what comes out of it. So maybe for some people it feels really averse, and I don't know if then there's the need to force yourself to do nothing if this is a thing that doesn't feel good. So why do it? For example, some people say they really like relaxation techniques, for example. Some people say, then they get tension everywhere in their body. And this is not always pathological, because we know more and more about that our brains function a bit differently, and not everybody has the same brain. But I think it's always interesting to find out. So, okay, if I maybe give myself a half an hour where I do nothing, what happens then? Sometimes it's very interesting because emotions arise, thoughts arise. Maybe we get creative by this. Why not try? I don't think that anything really bad can happen with this experiment.
It's like a meditation light.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And what if I do all these things, but I still don't feel better? I think then this is definitely the point to ask for help. Also, of course, professional help. The sooner the better, the earlier the better. And there's a variety of options. So maybe we first think of psychotherapy, for example, but for many people, this isn't it. There are other options, maybe at first, like counseling, the general practitioner, self-help groups, so many others. An employee assistance program, if the company has one, for example. And I would say the sooner the better. Yeah, and we talked about mindfulness and awareness a lot today, and also about an open communication culture. And I think in that regards, it's also important to talk about what happens or what should I do when I realize I feel fine, but I realize my colleague seems to have some challenges. How can I address this impression without crossing his or her boundaries or hurting feelings?
So in general, I would say it's always good to speak up and to talk to the person and to describe what you noticed. So not to talk about a diagnosis, of course, or what you assume or about a hypothesis, but maybe stick to what you experienced. For example, like, okay, I've noticed you've seemed a bit quieter recently, or I might be wrong, but I've sensed you have a lot on your mind. How are you doing? I was wondering, how are you doing? To maybe ask it openly and to stick to your individual experience. And of course, it also depends on the relationship that I have to a certain colleague. Sometimes it's always good to have in mind that I don't have to put everything in one conversation. So also maybe the idea of professional help, if I want to say, okay, have you thought about talking to a professional? I don't have to do all this in one conversation. And sometimes it can be helpful to have in mind that I can maybe start this conversation about this topic, and there might be a second conversation where I can also address this or propose this if it feels right.
Yeah, and sometimes you can also leave your colleague with the impression that you care and that he or she might come back at a later time when he or she is ready to talk about things. Yeah, and I think also it's again what I feel, you need a bit of courage for scenarios like that, but then when you get an answer like, please leave me alone with this, to put it in a very negative way, then I think it's just really, don't take it personally, maybe also, because it's something really nice to do, to care about your neighbors and your friends and your colleagues. And I think it's just, sometimes you just have to accept when you get a no, but it's not a no to you as a person, maybe.
And sometimes it's just not the time yet. I have many people who seek counseling because somebody gave this person the feedback of what he or she noticed. And I speak a lot of people who say, they told me earlier, maybe it was half a year ago, maybe it was a year ago, and now I'm at this point, and they didn't forget about it. And maybe this can add up to the point where they decide to seek support, but maybe it takes time and it wasn't yet the right time for them.
Okay, cool. Okay. Well, we are running out of time. So before we wrap it up, is there a key message you'd like to leave us with, Katharina?
Maybe that when it comes to mental health, I think this is not a luxury thing or something that we can care about when everything else is done, when we worked through the whole to-do list and then we can care about ourselves. I think it is the foundation for everything that we do. Sometimes we begin to realize this when we have a phase where we don't feel well and we realize what's affected then. And I think every day is a good day to really check in with ourselves, be self-aware, and ask ourselves, how am I doing today? And this is the first step.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Katharina. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. I think this is a topic we could easily speak about 2 or 3 hours more, but I think all our calendars are probably rather packed and the day comes to an end. So thank you for coming. Thank you for taking the time. We really hope that you took some advice and some insights with you that you can make use of, and hope to see you next time again.